Hey guys, what's up? It's Bro Gaming from TheHackersParadox, and I also have my own channel in case you guys want to go check that out. I will be rating Laughing Jack to you guys as a, what's it called, creepy pasta, and yeah, so make sure to check out both the channels, subscribe, and watch our videos and stuff on both of them. Leave a like, It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old son James was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James has always been a quiet boy. He plays with himself mostly. He never had many friends, but he always had a wild imagination. I was in the kitchen feeding our dog Fido when I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I'm not sure who he could be talking to. Could he have finally made a friend? Being a single dad, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son, so I decided to go outside and check on him. When I was in the backyard, I was a bit confused, because James was the only person back there. Was he talking to himself? I could have sworn I heard another voice. "James, it's time to come inside," I called out to him. He came inside and sat down at the kitchen table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. "James, who are you talking to out there?" I asked. James looked up for a moment. "I was playing with my new friend," he said, smiling, poured him some milk, and continued to pry, as any good father would. "Does your friend have a name? Why didn't you ask him to come have lunch with us? Excuse me," I asked. James stared at me for a moment before replying. "His name is Laughing Jack." I was a bit taken back by what he said. "Oh, that's a strange name. What does your friend look like?" I asked, a bit confused. "He's a clown. He has long hair and a big swirly cone nose. He has got arms and baggy pants with striped socks, and he always smiles." I realized my son was talking about an imaginary friend. I suppose it's normal for kids his age to have imaginary friends, especially when he has no real kids to play with. It's probably just a phase. The rest of the day went on per usual, and it was starting to get late, so I put James to bed. I tucked him in, I gave him a kiss, and made sure to turn on his nightlight before I closed the door. I was pretty tired myself, so I decided to go to bed not long after. I had an awful nightmare. It was dark. I was in some kind of rundown amusement park. I was scared, running through the endless field of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a horrible look to it. Everything was black and white. The prized stuffed animals hung from their noses in the game huts, all sick grins stitched on their faces. It felt like the whole park was looking at me, even though there wasn't another living thing in sight. Then suddenly, I began to hear music play. The sounds of Pop Goes the Weasel began playing on the squeeze box echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. I followed the tune to the circus tent and almost fell into a trance, unable to stop my legs from moving forward. It was pitch black. The only light came from a single spotlight shining down the center of the big top. As I walked through the light, the music As I walked towards the light, the music slowed down. I found myself singing along, unable to unstop. All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought it was all the way fun. Pop goes the weasel. The music stopped right before its climax, and suddenly the lights shot on. The intensity of the light was particularly blinding, and all I could see was the small dark silhouette shuffling towards me. Then another one appeared, and another, and another. There were dozens of them, all coming towards me. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. All I could do was watch the haunting figures drew nearer. As they got closer, I could see they were children. As I looked at each other, I noticed that they were all horribly disfigured and mutilated. Some had cuts on their body, others were severely burned, and others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground, and tearing inside me. All as the children tore me apart, I faded away. All I could hear was laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. After taking a few deep breaths, I looked over and saw A few of James' action figures were positioned facing towards me on my nightstand. I sighed. James had probably woken up early and put this here. I gathered the toys and made my way to James's room. However, when I opened the door, James was sound asleep. I shrugged and placed the toys back in his toy box. I headed into the living room. A little while later, James woke up and I made him his breakfast. He was quiet and seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I decided to ask him about his toys. James, honey, did you put the toys in Daddy's bedroom in the morning? His eyes shot up for a moment and then quickly glanced back down at his cereal. Laughing Jack did it. I rolled my eyes and responded, well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room. James nodded and finished up his breakfast, then decided to go play out in the backyard. I went to relax in the living room, and I must have dozed off because I woke up a couple hours later. Shiz, I need to check on James. Yeah, I was a bit worried. It had been over 2 hours, and I haven't checked on him. When I stepped outside in the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. I was getting nervous, so I called him. James! James! Where are you? Just then I heard a giggle from the front yard. I rushed through the gate around the front of the house. James was sitting on the sidewalk. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. James, how many times have I told you to stay in the backyard? James, what are you eating? James looked up at me and reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of hard candies in all colors. This made me very nervous. James, who gave you that candy? James stared at me, not speaking. James, tell Daddy where you got that candy. James hung his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart sunk. I kneeled down to look at him in the eye. James, I've had enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He's not real. Now this is a very serious situation and I need to know who gave you that candy. I could see my son's eyes tearing up. But Dada, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James had never lied to me before. Hold on, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting caught up. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James has never lied to me, but what he's telling me is impossible. I made him spit out the candy and I threw the rest away. James appears to be fine. Maybe I'm just overreacting. After all, he could have gotten it from Tom and Linda from next door, on Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'm going to have to keep a closer eye on James. That night, I put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early myself. Suddenly, I woke up by a loud bang coming from the kitchen. I sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown to the floor, and our dog Fido hung dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with candy, the same type that James was eating earlier today. My shock was quickly broken by a sharp scream coming from James's room. I followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs with the speed that only a father whose child is in danger could have. I brushed through the door and flicked on the lights. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed on the ground. My poor son was in his bed crying and shaking with fear. A pool of urine stained the sheets. I scooped my child up and ran down the stairs and went next door to Tom and Linda's house. Luckily, they were still awake. They let me use their phone, and I called the police. It didn't take long for them to arrive, and I explained what had happened. They looked at me as if I was crazy. They searched the house, but all they could found was a dead dog in 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gone into the house and done this right before they made a quick escape when they heard me coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked and none of the windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next day, Jack stayed inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. I went into the garage and found his old baby monitor and set it up in his room. If anything comes into his room tonight, I was going to be able to hear it. I went into the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife from the drawer and put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little boy. Soon enough, night came. I put James to bed. He was afraid. but I promised him that I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and turned on the nightlight. Before closing the door, I whispered to him, "Good night, James. I love you." I tried to stay up as long as I could, but after a few hours, I felt myself drifting off. My baby would be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. Just as I lay my head on the pillow, I heard a soft noise come from the baby monitor that I had put on the nightstand. At first, it sounded like interference, like the kind a radio would make. Then it turned to a soft moan. Was James asleep? Then I heard it, the laugh from my nightmare. That horrible laugh. I sprung up out from my bed and grabbed the knife from under my pillow. I rushed over to James's room and creaked the door open. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step and could feel the warm, thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James' nightlight came on, and I could see the absolute horror laid in front of me. James' body was nailed up against the wall, his piercing through his hands and feet. His chest was cut wide open, and his organs were hung down to the floor. His eyes and tongue had been removed, along with most of his teeth. I was disgusted. I could hardly believe this was my baby boy. Then I heard it again, the soft, desperate moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby, in so much pain, barely clinging to life. I ran across the room and vomited on the floor. My sickness was interrupted by a horrible crackle coming from behind me. I spun around to see while wiping the bile from my mouth, and then out of the shadows emerged the fiend responsible for all this horror, Laughing Jack. His ghost white skin matted the black hair hung down to his shoulders. He had piercing white eye surroundings by dark black rings. His twisted smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth, and his skin didn't look like skin at all. It almost looked like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy, black, white cloud outfit with a striped sleeve and socks. His body itself was grotesque, his long arms hanging down past his waist to let me know he was pleased with his reaction. His long arms hanging down past his waist, and the way he posed made him look almost harmless, like a rag doll. He let out a sickening laugh as if to let me know he was pleased with my reaction to his work. And then he turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh even more at the horrific sight laid out. That was enough to shake me from my terror. I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" I rushed at the monster, raising the knife above my head. I stabbed down at him, but just as the knife touched him, he disappeared into a cloud of black smoke. The knife passed right through him and pierced James, still beating hard. Splashed the warm blood on my face. No, what have I done? My baby! I killed my baby! Immediately fell to my knees and could hear sirens growing in the distance louder. My boy, my sweet boy, I promised Daddy wouldn't protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Police soon arrived to find me in front of my son, still wielding the knife covered in my baby's blood. The trial was short insanity. I was placed in the Phiropolys home of the criminally insane, where I had been for the past 2 months. It's not bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside my window. I'll talk to the orderlies about it in the morning. So anyways, guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe to the Hackers Paradox for sure. I will be posting more content on this channel, as well as go check out my channel, Codebro Gaming, if you will. So, thanks, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.